What is the best Nintendo controller? Let's go. Finally got the homework done. Time to play some good old Wii Sports. Alright, let's play some boxing. Oh, what's up, little bro? How we doing? I just got off work. Think I could join too? Oh, what's up, bro? Yeah, sure, you can play. Just grab the second controller right there and we'll play some boxing together. Oh, okay. So I have to be player 2? What's with that? Come on, man. I just got off work. Like, why you gotta treat me like that? Yeah, sorry, bro. I already grabbed the first controller and I already booted it up, so I'm gonna be player 1. Sorry. Okay, well, I'm older. I'm the oldest in the family, so I should be player 1, not you. Like, what is this? Well, I don't care if you're the oldest. I don't care if you're older than me. This is my Wii, so I should be player 1, not you. Fine. Then I'm gonna stand here all day until I get what I want. If I don't get player 1, then I'm not leaving. I didn't want to have to do this to you, but here we go. I'm doing mom with you. Don't tell mom. Why are you telling mom? I just wanted to play the Wii. Yeah, so today we will be talking about each and every single one of the Nintendo controllers for each of their consoles released in the US, the United States of America. So before you little gremlins leave your little comments, oh, you missed the color TV, you missed the DS and the Game Boy. No, these are home consoles. These are the home console controllers. These were all released in the US. Nintendo of America, not Nintendo of Japan. No. Only the US. So, without further ado, there are 9 total controllers that we are going to be going over and ranking each of them and breaking them down one by one and seeing what truly is the best controller and seeing how the controllers have changed throughout the years and revolutionized since the very beginning, all the way to the most recent release of the Nintendo Switch 2. So, we will be going over the facts about these controllers, when they came out, and yeah, so let's do it. Starting off, we have the first console to release alongside its controller as well. Released in 1985. Now, yes, I get it. It released 2 years earlier than 1985 in 1983 in Japan as the Famicom. But we will be going over the NES and not the Famicom, which the NES released in 1985 here in the States from Nintendo of America. So, of course, that is the NES controller. The NES controller, released in 1983, revolutionized gaming with its rectangular design and cross D-pad and 2 action buttons. It moved away from bulky joysticks to a more precise digital interface. The NES controller is one of the most iconic controller designs out there. It's what started it all. It's what most people know about. It's just a super simple, easy, basic design that anyone can pick up and play. And that's why it works so well. And yes, Nintendo, before they were a video game company, were a toy company. So like back in Japan, they had their color TV console, which didn't do all that well because there was already a lot of video game consoles on the market, and you know, everyone was just trying to get their own piece of the pie, and no one was buying them. And so Nintendo decided to step it up with the Famicom in Japan, and then of course in the US, Nintendo of America started up and they brought us the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System, which saved the gaming industry from the crash of, I think it was like the crash of '83 or something like that.
And so these were kind of considered toys back in the day. Like video game consoles were considered toys. And so they were kind of like every kid's childhood dream to get for their birthdays or Christmas, and everyone just wanted one of these. And so, yeah, the NES controller, holding it in your hand, it isn't too bad. It kind of fits just like this, and that's how you play it, It can be a little uncomfortable if you're gripping it too tight, you might get poked in the hand because it's a rectangular design. But other than that, it's nothing too crazy, You got your D-pad for your movement, if you're playing Super Mario Bros, you just go left and right. And you press A and B to jump, and start the game, select to pause it. Or if you're playing the original Legend of Zelda, you can go up, down, side to side, and yeah. So you don't have much here, but it's super simple. It was what started it all. So this was the first steps, little baby steps getting there. So yeah, pretty cool.
Next up, we have the sequel to the NES. Yes, Nintendo made a sequel to their console, their most popular console back in the day. The NES saved the gaming industry, and so they had to make the successor to that, and that, of course, is the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or also known as the SNES or SNES. The Super Nintendo controller launched in 1990 revolutionized gamepad design by introducing the diamond button-shaped 4-button layout and the shoulder buttons. Its ergonomic, rounded design set the standard for modern controllers, heavily influencing the PlayStation gamepad layout.
Here we are with Nintendo's sequel console, the Super Nintendo, or SNES, or SNES. Whatever you want to call it, I don't really care. But yeah, so another pretty basic design, pretty basic controller, but this is also where it kind of all started right here, is with this controller. Yes, I get it. The Nintendo Entertainment System's controller, the NES, was pretty basic as well, and more basic than this. But that was the first steps into getting here. They didn't really have the technology to make games that needed all of these buttons. And so now that they had their sequel console, and with the updated graphics, like the 16-bit, you had more power to your games and you could do more. And so this controller right here is pretty much where it started all, and influenced and inspired most of the controllers we all know and love today. The PS1 controller kind of came out after this in 1994. So Nintendo was actually collaborating with Sony, and they were actually both going to make their own console together. And they were going to have a controller that was actually pretty much just like this. But I don't really know the details. Something happened between the two companies, and PlayStation ended up going off and doing their own thing and making the PS1. And that's what started the rivalry there. And now Nintendo just decided they wanted to have more competition, I guess, because Sega wasn't enough, Sega had their own consoles, and, their controllers were a bit weird, their controllers were kind of weirdly designed, but here's the Super Nintendo controller that started it all. You still have your regular D-pad, you still have your start and select, your basic buttons, but then you get to your A and B, but now you have X and Y. So that's where we got this diamond layout shaped right here. That's where it started all, and you have the shoulder buttons, L and R. So if you want to play the original OG Mario Kart with this bad boy, you do some drifts, It's not very fun to do it, it's honestly kind of hard to drift in that game, but it's there, so yeah, pretty cool.
Now, this next one is a console / portable handheld thingy. Whatever you want to call it, you consider it whatever you want, but we're going to count it here on the channel. I don't really care if it's considered a portable handheld or not. I mean, technically it's really not, but yeah. This is a console that is also not very well known by a lot of people, but that's because it was a failed console. It was a failure. Didn't even crack 1 million units sold because it just did that bad. And that, of course, is the Nintendo Virtual Boy. The Nintendo Virtual Boy controller is a unique M-shaped wired, notable for being the first to feature 2 D-pads for 3D environment navigation. It houses the console's power source, battery pack, or AC adapter, and includes 6 face buttons, 2 rear triggers, and an on and off switch. It requires for operation.
Now we have the good old Virtual Boy controller. The console that no one really knows about or cares about because it was a failure. The console didn't even sell over 1 million units, so it was a big flop. Nintendo kind of just stopped caring about it until recently. You know, you can play their games on Nintendo Online. You can buy a little accessory to play it, just like the classic Virtual Boy. And so yeah, they're trying to finally bring this console back for some reason. You know, they're kind of giving it the recognition, even though it was a failure. You know, it's still a cool piece of history to look back on for sure. But this controller is honestly pretty cool design. It's the good old M-shaped. It has these grips on the side, which are actually really comfortable. You have these grooves for your fingers to set in. Now, the buttons are kind of goofy. They kind of just go back to the classic A and B, start, select, and now you have a D-pad. But not only just one D-pad, you have 2 D-pads. So it's kind of like pretty similar to like modern controllers and kind of how they would look, but this is obviously different. And this was before the analog sticks were a thing, and so instead of 2 analog sticks, you have 2 D-pads. So, I guess that works. But for the Virtual Boy, it's honestly not bad. Most of the games on it are actually pretty decent. Now, it's pretty held back because it's on the Virtual Boy and the console is red and black. Like the graphics for the colors of it. And so that's why it failed, because it hurts people's eyes. And yeah, this is the switch that turns on the console. Yes, the controller literally powers the console with this cord hooked up to it. And so you just switch it on. It also has this battery pack, which you can take on and off. There's also an AC adapter you can buy for it instead of using the battery pack. So pretty neat little thing, but it's nothing too special. It's the Virtual Boy at the end of the day. So, yeah.
Now, next up is technically the next console and the next home console that Nintendo was kind of already developing after the Super Nintendo. And the Virtual Boy was kind of a console that had to rush out real quick because for the wait time in the meantime for the next console. And this was kind of like the third console that they had. This was kind of like the trilogy. You had the NES, Super NES, and now the third console that changed the gaming space as a whole, and that, of course, is the Nintendo 64. The Nintendo 64 controller revolutionized gaming with its unique 3-prong M-shaped design to accommodate both 2D and 3D games. Released in 1996, it introduced the standard use of the analog stick and the Z trigger.
Yep. Now we have this goofy looking thing. So it's kind of similar to the Virtual Boy controller. It still kind of has that M-shaped design with it. You don't have a select button anymore. You just have the start button. So, yeah. And now you have A and B still. So it is pretty similar to the Virtual Boy, honestly. But instead, in the middle, for this little thing sticking out, you now have an analog stick for 3D movement. So the N64 was kind of the start for Nintendo's 3D graphics and 3D games that they made. Sony kind of already started that with the PS1, but the PS1's controller did not have an analog stick, and so 3D movement was a little bit more difficult back then. So Nintendo started it off with this bad boy, and you pretty much hold the controller like this. And also, so you have your D-pad right here, and you have these camera controlled D-pad thingy that you have. And so as you can see, that's kind of similar to the Virtual Boy with the two D-pads, but obviously this is more for the camera control, and this is for you to move your character around and stuff like that. And you also have this trigger on the back, the Z trigger. So you got more buttons on here. You know, it's definitely really weird to hold. It's definitely kind of uncomfortable. And I remember talking to a family member about this controller and the console, because he actually grew up with this console. And I remember showing him this controller because, you know, he has the Switch 2 now. You know, he still plays games. And he even told me, he was like, man, I honestly don't know how I use this thing. Because it's really weird. But it's still a cool little thing and a fun thing to look back on. You know, I have recently played Super Mario 64 on the original N64 with this controller. And it's definitely janky at times, but, you know, you gotta get used to the jankiness for sure. That's just how it is.
Now, this next one kind of changed things up a bit. Kind of changed the game a little bit for Nintendo. This was around the time where they had two competitors now. Now, Sega dropping out of the race because they just weren't doing very well. You know, it was always Nintendo versus Sega. And now it was PlayStation and now Xbox joining the race during this time. And so they were kind of trying to compete with all the other dogs in the race. And so this was kind of like the more power console, the more pro gaming experience. And that, of course, is the Nintendo Gamecube. The Nintendo Gamecube controller is renowned for its ergonomic wide grip shape, octagonal joystick gates for precise directions, and a unique button layout design for Super Smash Bros. Melee. It features hybrid L and R triggers, an analog plus digital click, and prominent green A button with iconic variants including the wireless Wavebird.
Now we have this bad boy. Yeah, the good old GameCube controller. This is known for being one of Nintendo's best controllers ever. One, because it's actually looks like a good actual functioning controller, not only just to hold. Like, yes, it is very, very comfortable to hold in your hands. The grip is actually crazy. It's a little smaller grip, but you know, for me, I got small hands, so it fits pretty good. Then you have the camera control, this little C camera stick, which is now down here. This is also kind of a similar design to the N64 controller as well. And, you know, they kind of had a step-by-step process for each controller, kind of evolving over time. So, you know how you had your D-pad up here on the N64 controller, and then your camera little D-pad sticks over here. So now they just turn that into a complete camera joystick down here, and move the D-pad down here, and now we have another joystick for 3D movement. And they also brought back X and Y finally, since the Super Nintendo. So, yeah, but they're not the same diamond button shaped layout that we all know from the Super Nintendo or PlayStation or Xbox. You know, this was around the time where even Xbox joined the competition. So you also have your start button and pause button. And for these, you know, you have your large green A, which you can't get that wrong. You can't mess that up. Small B, and these weirdly shaped X and Y buttons. Then, of course, you have your Z button. You have nothing over here for some reason. Still don't understand that, but, you know, Nintendo. And then, of course, you have your L and R triggers, which, can you hear that click? It's just so nice and satisfying. But yeah, so this controller was pretty much meant for Smash Melee. Sakurai really took the design of this controller and utilized it for the Smash Bros. Melee movements, and it just worked so well, and it's just so dang perfect for that game.
Now, next up, Nintendo kind of had to change things up a bit for the game and the gaming industry as a whole, because against their competitors, PlayStation and Xbox, they didn't do too well in the previous generation. And, you know, that's not to say the Gamecube was an absolute failed console, an absolute failure, but they needed something new. They needed to start over, start from scratch, because this whole competing for who's the best console with the best power and the best pro gaming experience, no, they had to target to a newer audience, a different audience, to try to see what they can do and experiment a little. That, of course, is the Nintendo Wii. The Wii Remote, or Wiimote, revolutionized gaming with motion sensing technology, using accelerometers and interfaced in-frame light to track movement in 3D space. Released in 2006, it featured a one-handed TV remote design to appeal to the non-gamers, with a speaker, rumble, and expansion port for accessories, like the Wii Nunchuck.
Then you go over to this funky looking thing. I mean, you go from regular good controllers that you hold in your hand to just this thing that, you know, you just use one hand. But that's also why the Wii did so well, because it was just so easy to pick up and play, super simple, easy to use. You know, you can compare it to a TV remote. You know, these are almost the exact same size. That's why they tried something different and to appeal to a new audience, to the non-gamers, because this was to replicate a regular TV remote, but it had motion controls. You wave it around, you select the games you want, you know, you play the games with the motion controls, like Wii Sports. You know, you have your tennis, you have your baseball, you have your bowling, you have your boxing, you have your golf, you know, super easy, simple movements. And then, you know, Wii Sports Resort later had the Wii Motion Plus, which I guess that thing detects 3D movements even more and better. They also have controllers that have the built-in Motion Control Plus. You know, there's one in my closet in there, but I'm not going to get that out. This was the original Wii Remote that came with my childhood Wii that I still have. And so, yeah, super easy and simple. You know, you have your A button to select things. You have your D-pad, your power button, which can also power off the console. I think it can power it on. Your plus and minus, your home button, your 1 and 2 buttons, and then you have the B button on the back. So you can also play games, flip the controller around like this, kind of like going back to the OG Nintendo roots with the NES. I remember as a kid, we had the original Mario Bros. On the NES downloaded on the Wii from like the virtual console thing that they had. And that's how I first played the original Mario Bros. Was on the Wii, and I remember playing it like this. You know, you move the D-pad back and forth. 1 and 2 is your run and jump button. And so, yeah. Plus, you pause the game. So, yeah, it's super basic, and it works really well. So,
now for this next one, Nintendo tried to go off the success of their console, which was the Wii. Because the Wii actually did really well and their ideas did work. And so they try to keep the success going with that and keep the hype going with their successor to it, their sequel console. And yes, this next one also uses very similar ideas as the Wii, but they also tried to put their own unique spin on it and tried something else. And that, of course, is the Wii U. The Wii U gamepad features a 6.2-inch touchscreen, motion controls, and an NFC reader for Amiibo, allowing for off-TV play and second-screen gameplay. It uses a wireless protocol to minimize latency.
The Wii U gamepad. Yeah. So Nintendo tried going for a similar concept and design from the Nintendo Wii, and they tried going for a new approach to the Wii with their successor, the Wii U. And they kept the same similar ideas, but they added this dang bulky thing. The Wii U gamepad is actually pretty cool and pretty unique little piece of hardware. And it honestly is kind of the setup and the blueprints for their next console, if you think about it. And so without the Wii U, you don't have the Switch. But this thing is pretty bulky. It is pretty comfortable to hold, I'm not going to lie. Look at the back here, you know, you have these little things that kind of rest in your hands pretty well. You have your ZR and ZL triggers now. You have your L and R buttons now on the top. This thing is for the charging port, where you slide in it on the charging port. You have your home button. There was the TV control, your power button. This is kind of your whole operating system right here to use your Wii U. It's like your Wii remote, but this time it's a little mini TV screen in your hands. And so it acts as a second controller and as a second screen. Of course, you have your D-pad. You know, you can't have a controller without the D-pad. Then you go back to the regular basic design button layout, the diamond button layout, A, B, X, Y. Your plus and minus, though, are next to each other right here and are vertical from each other for some reason. Then, of course, you have the joysticks, which are pretty smooth, honestly. They feel pretty good. You have a camera up here for camera games, and then, of course, you have the actual Wii U touchscreen. This thing is also motion controls, too. You can move it around as a motion control. You can press this and do things with the gamepad for different games that access the touchscreen. It now has the NFC reader for Amiibo, and now you can use Amiibo for your games, and if you want to do that. So yeah, pretty neat little piece of hardware, I'm not gonna lie.
Now next up, they had to kind of change things up once again because the Wii U was technically a flop and a failure. So they had to step up their game again and try something else. And you know, the Wii U was kind of the blueprint for this next one and kind of had the same concept, but they changed things up a bit to make it to where it's appealing to everyone again. And completely different new idea, and that of course is the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch 1, the V1 Joy-Cons are versatile controllers featuring HD rumble, motion controls, gyroscopic accelerometer, and NFC support for Amiibo in the right unit. They can be used separately, attached to the console, or in a grip. They have 20-hour battery life and are also known to suffer from joystick drift.
Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons. The Nintendo Switch 1 Joy-Cons, for that matter. Yeah, as you can tell, these things have been through the ringer. These Joy-Cons are not really playable at all. I think these were my second pair of Joy-Cons that I owned. You know, these aren't the original. I think the originals, the blue was this one and the red was this one, and so these were the color swapped other versions that they later on released. And you know, I used them quite a bit. You know, friends and family used them quite a bit, and this is what happens with the Joy-Cons, and it happens with most people, honestly. It's also missing the little piece here for the joystick. But yeah, they're pretty cool design controllers. They can also act as their own separate controllers if you want to flip them around like that and play games like that. I don't know why you would want to do that. They're pretty uncomfortable to hold. These triggers up here to play them like this are very small and hard to click on. But yeah, if you flip them like this, they act as normal controllers, and you use this to slide them into the grip, just like so. Pretty satisfying. Bada boom, bada bang. So yeah, you have your regular kind of D-pad buttons down here, your regular A, B, X, Y buttons, your joysticks. Obviously, you have your home button. This is now the capture button to take pictures and screenshots. Plus and minus are now side to side instead of vertical, so that's pretty good that they have that. Of course, you have your L and R shoulder buttons and your ZR and ZL trigger buttons up here, and acts as like a functional good controller that you can use now. And you can also take them off, bring over your Switch, slide them on just like so, and now it plays like a handheld. And this is kind of what I was saying about how the Wii U was kind of the blueprints for that. And then you can just put your Switch into the dock, and then it goes over to the TV. So it's pretty cool. And if you want to, you can use the Pro Controller when you plug it into the TV. But you know, we're counting the controllers that the console and the system came with, because if that was the case, we'd have to count the Wii Pro Controller and the Wii U Pro Controller. But yeah, the Switch 1 Pro Controller was pretty good, but sadly, that's not what we're talking about today. So, yeah.
And of course, last but not least, the most recent release for Nintendo, their most newest console release just last year in 2025. And that, of course, is the sequel to the Nintendo Switch, another sequel console, another successor, to try going off of the success of their most popular console of all time. That, of course, is the Nintendo Switch 2. The Nintendo Switch 2 Joy-Cons, or Joy-Con 2s, features a larger, more ergonomic design with magnetic attachment system instead of rails. They include a new C button for chat, advanced mouse motion controls, and a matte texture finish, providing a more robust feel design to prevent drift and reduce hand fatigue.
Now we have the Nintendo Switch 2 Joy-Cons, or also known as the Joy-Con 2s. Yeah, so nothing too crazy, nothing too special from the previous Joy-Cons. They're pretty much the same thing, as you can tell. But yeah, there's a few differences. They're obviously a lot bigger. They obviously feel way more comfortable in your hands, especially if you're going to hold them like this. Depending on the game you're going to play, you know, it might be a game with motion controls. You know, as of recently, Galaxy 1 and 2 just came to the Switch, and I played it on the Switch 2, and this is how you play it. You know, it's pretty fun. You can also do the same thing, flip them around like this, pass a Joy-Con to a friend, and these buttons, these trigger buttons, are actually bigger now, and they're actually more accessible. Flip them like this, play them like this, or you can slide them in to the grip, but not this time. They attach magnetically instead of sliding in like rails. So you just click them in like that. Pretty dang satisfying, if you ask me. That's one of the first things I messed with quite a bit when I first got the Switch 2 was taking the Switch Joy-Con, the Switch 2 Joy-Cons off, on and off, just because it was so dang fun and satisfying. And so yeah, it's pretty much the same thing as the Switch 1. Your joysticks, your D-pad, home button, capture button, A, B, X, Y, plus, minus. You also have the C button down here for game chat now. Yeah, Nintendo has game chat, finally, in 2026. It's about time, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't even think anyone really uses it, because it's kind of a stupid way to do game chat, but that's a different topic for another day. You know, you have your L and R shoulders, your Z and R, ZR, ZL triggers, and to take off the Joy-Cons, you click these, and they just attach just like so. Just like that. Bada bing, bada boom. You bring your console over, and they attach. Oops. Just like so. Pretty satisfying. Yeah, and then, of course, like I said, the Pro Controller for when you slide it into the dock. This is honestly one of the best controllers Nintendo has made, but we're not counting the Pro Controllers because we'd have to count the other ones. We're just counting the ones that come with the console, which are these thingies. So yeah, the Switch 2 Joy-Cons are pretty good. There's really not too much like bad I can say about them. They also have mouse controls and mouse function now, where you can turn them onto their side. They have this mouse sensor right here and act as a mouse. I tried playing Metroid Prime 4 like this for a little bit, and to be honest, it's kind of uncomfortable. Playing it as a mouse like this kind of hurts your hands, I'm not gonna lie. But other than that, it's pretty good. They're pretty good controllers, so yeah.
And there you have it. That was every Nintendo controller released from 1983 to 2025. All 9 controllers in total. So, that brings us back to the question, what is the best Nintendo controller? There was quite a few to go over and quite a few to talk about, and each of them have their own unique little designs and their own unique little features. So there's a lot of arguments you can have for what is the best Nintendo controller. And, you know, you could say the NES controller is the best because it's what started it all. Without the NES controller, we wouldn't have any of the controllers we would have today. You could say the same thing about the Super Nintendo controller, which was the next step. And that controller inspired most of the controllers we all know and love today, like Sony's PlayStation and Microsoft's Xbox controllers. So you have that. You have the N64 controller, which gave us the analog stick for 3D movement. You have the Wii remote, which gave us the motion controls. And ever since then, we've had motion controls for each console, including PlayStation. So, what is the best Nintendo controller? There are quite a few to pick from. You know, the Switch 2 Joy-Cons, like I just said, feel pretty comfortable. They're pretty cool, they're pretty unique with the mouse controls, but they're also pretty similar to the first Switch 1 Joy-Cons. They just add a few new features. The Wii U gamepad is what the blueprints were for the Nintendo Switch. So, what I'm trying to say is, they all were kind of leading up to each other, and they all kind of evolved into what we have now, which is the Switch 2 Joy-Cons. And yes, I know, the Pro controllers are kind of just the extra controller you can have for your more pro gaming experience on your monitors or your TVs, whatever. So you have that, but we're not counting the Pro controllers here. That might be another video idea later on down the road. But then you have the GameCube controller, which was kind of its own little thing that they had. And it has several different variations for the GameCube controller, you know. It's what started Smash Bros. It's what became Smash Bros. Is that controller. It's when you think of Smash Bros, you think of Smash Melee, you think of the GameCube, you think of the GameCube controller. That controller was meant for Smash Bros. Melee. And it was so popular and so big that people didn't know what they would do without that controller for the next Smash Bros. Games released down the line. When Brawl came out, Nintendo released a controller, a new GameCube controller for their next console, just to play Smash Brawl. Now, that controller was Japan only, I get that, but the Wii is also backwards compatible with the GameCube, so you can plug your GameCube controller into the Wii and use a GameCube controller for Brawl. Same thing can be said for the Wii U and Smash 4 Wii U. They re-released and made another GameCube controller, and this is 2 generations after the GameCube. So they made another controller just for Smash Bros. And those fans that just really love the GameCube controller. Same thing for the Nintendo Switch 1. They also re-released another GameCube controller for Smash Ultimate. And as of recently, For Nintendo Online, for the Switch 2, they have the new Nintendo Online app where now you can play GameCube games, and they've re-released all of the controllers from the past that they've already had. Like, there's already an NES, Super NES, N64 that you can all buy, because it's part of like the little accessories you can own as part of the Nintendo Online experience. If you want to use those controllers, they're more modern and more newer, that you can use now for the Nintendo Online games. And if you want the old retro experience, those are an option. So they've re-released the GameCube controller multiple times. And as you can see, where I'm coming from and where I'm going with this, you might think like, oh yeah, the guy that grew up with the Wii, he's probably going to choose the Wii Remote. The Wii Remote's okay, you know, it's just there. I did grow up playing the Wii. I also had the DS and 3DS growing up, so I kind of did have a little bit of controller feel. I also went over to friends and family's house and played the PS3, so I knew what a modern, like, pro gaming controller and experience felt like. But the Wii was just a super simple, easy controller to pick up and play, and it was pretty basic, and that's why the Wii sold and did very well, and it was a success of a console. But the GameCube controller just feels right. Now, if I were to make a top 3 of the best Nintendo controllers, it would have to be, the number 3 spot would have to be the Super Nintendo controller. One, because it inspired and influenced most of the controllers we know and love today. It also feels really comfortable. It also is super easy and simple as well. And it's nothing too crazy. There's not like dozens of buttons to get confused on, you know. All they add was the shoulder buttons and X and Y. Number 2 would probably have to be the Wii Remote. Just because, yes, it might be nostalgia bias. Who cares? I like the Wii Remote. It's super cool. It's super fun. And, you know, it really does detect your 3D movement pretty well and pretty accurate. You know, there might be a few times where it gets a little wonky and janky, but, you know, if you have the Wii sensor bar, there's not really going to be any problems. So yeah, where I'm going with this is my number 1. And my number 1 would be the GameCube controller. I said it. I'm sorry. That might be a super simple take. Most people probably have the same opinion as I do on what the best controller is. But realistically, we have to be honest. We have to be realistic here. It has to be the GameCube controller. Like, I'm sorry. But yeah, the GameCube controller is the winner of this video. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about today. And if you want to see more videos like this, let me know down below in the comments for more video ideas kind of similar to this. I like making these types of videos. They're super fun and easy, you know. I just do it for fun. And because shout out to my boy QuesoBuilder on YouTube. He is a good friend of mine. We have been doing YouTube. We kind of started our channels around the same time, kind of like back in 2020, I think. So we've both been kind of doing this for a while. You know, we both haven't been very consistent. We kind of do every now and then. But he does do Smash Bros. Ultimate live streams every now and then, and trying to build a little community there. They're pretty fun streams to watch. And so I'll leave a link down to his channel. So shout out to him for this video idea. And so yeah, let me also know down below in the comments what your favorite Nintendo controller is. And so yeah, also like and subscribe. Subscribe down below. It's super simple and easy. Not that hard, you know. You just press a button. It helps me out and it means a lot to me. We do have a goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers. We just hit our goal of 500 just not too long ago. So let's keep that going. We're starting to get a little bigger. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about today. So yeah, see ya.